Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into another episode of Capitol View, a webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined by our Capitol Bureau Chief, Bobby Harrison, down in Jackson. This webcast comes to you every Monday around 2 p.m. If you miss it live, catch the replay later in the day right here at djournal.com. Bobby, how you doing down there, man?
All right, Brad, how you doing?
I can't complain, sir. Can't complain.
Summertime has officially arrived.
Boy, it feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not my favorite time of year. I have to be honest with you. But it's kind of a dead period for many reasons. But Bobby, it's kind of like with college football. Bobby, politics is there's always something to talk about, even this time of year. Of course, right now we've got actually SEC Media Days going on in Hoover, Alabama. We've got Logan and Parrish down there covering that. And so there's something happening there. And here, Bobby, we're out of session. It's the dead of summer. We've got a couple of stories I want to talk about, though, that you've written lately. Let's talk about Chris McDaniel. People know that name.
Okay.
He gave Thad Cochran a run for his money in the 2014 U.S. senatorial race. State senator from Jones County, just kind of Tea Party candidate, kind of, in a way, Bobby, kind of came out of nowhere and gave Thad, I think, the closest race he's ever had.
That's right.
And,
he actually led he had more votes in the first primary and came within just a whisker of winning. In our system here in Mississippi, you had to win a majority to win the primary, and he was just a few votes short of getting that 50% majority, or 50 plus one. And
right.
So it went to a runoff, and the runoff, Cochran was able to bounce back and win the seat. And of course, Thad Cochran's been in office since the late 70s, is considered an iconic figure in Mississippi politics.
Sure.
But he near lost to Thad Cochran. To Chris McDaniel.
Yeah, and Chris is still serving as a state senator, and still you'll see his name pop up in the news for whatever reason occasionally. And now he's considering running again for the U.S. Senate seat occupied currently by the Roger Wicker from Tupelo, and he's up for re-election in 2018. So something he's probably going to look seriously at doing, Bobby. Either that or lieutenant governor. Of course, by law, Tate Reeves cannot serve a third term, and he's probably going to run for governor anyway in 2019, Bobby. But Chris sounds like somebody who's going to give Wicker a challenge, doesn't he?
Well, he said he's seriously considering running for either the U.S. Senate against Wicker in 2018 or for the open lieutenant governor's post in 2019. Of course, Wicker is the Tupelo resident, Pontotoc native, is a junior senator from Mississippi, but he's very powerful. He's considered part of the Senate leadership in Washington, D.C., and so if he's challenged by McDaniel, that'll be sort of a big deal nationally. And so, I don't know if you will or not, Brad. When he ran against Cochran in 2014, he sort of had the element of surprise on his side. Cochran hadn't been, active in raising money because he didn't think he was going to face a challenge. And I think Wicker's going to be, have a large war chest and be prepared for if McDaniel or someone like McDaniel does challenge him in the primary. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Wicker is, part of the, as I said, is close to Mitch McConnell, the Senate majority leader. So it would be a big deal if he was challenged by Chris McDaniel.
And Wicker got a lot of credit for how Republicans performed last year in elections, didn't he?
Yeah. He in the Senate race, going into the election season in 2016, the Republicans had some more seats to defend than the Democrats, and they also had some seats that were in what was considered Democratic leaning states. So the conventional wisdom was there was a good chance that the Republicans would lose their Senate majority, and they lost a couple of seats, I believe it was, but they were able to hold 52 seats to maintain their Senate majority. And Wicker, who was head of the election campaign, the election committee for the Senate Republicans, got a lot of credit for that showing.
Like I said, McDaniel, he's a part of the Tea Party branch or whatever you want to call it, not branch, but of the Republican Party. You got a lot of the people that fall into that Tea Party category, like McDaniel. I guess most people would consider a little farther to the right than your mainstream Republican. I'm curious, Bobby, about two things. A, if if it's possible for McDaniel to use his near success in 2014 and carry that over into the 2018 race, momentum, whatever you want to call it. That is a 4-year gap there. And B, you look at the election of Donald Trump. I don't know that I may be showing my political ignorance here. I don't know that Trump ever really identified as a Tea Party type candidate, but it seems like he's got the support of. That's maybe one reason he won the election, was having the support of the same kind of Republicans that might support McDaniel. I wonder if that might play a factor as well.
Yeah, well, McDaniel pointed that out when I talked to him last week, that the two top vote getters in the Republican primary for president in Mississippi were Ted Cruz, who was considered the Tea Party favorite going into the election, and Donald Trump, who is conventional wisdom, got a lot of those Tea Party votes. And so, I don't remember the exact quote, but McDaniel said that's his base, that's his people. So he said that bodes well for him in another statewide race, and maybe it does. But as I said, he won't have the element of surprise on his side, and he'll be running against a candidate who is going into the election. It's going to be well funded. Cochran kind of had to. Cochran, Senate Appropriations Committee chair, didn't have any trouble raising funds, but he just wasn't actively raising funds because he didn't think he was going to have that as serious raise as he ended up having. So he had to kind of, get a late start. Wicker's not going to get a late start. He's ready for Chris McDaniel or anybody else.
Yeah, and McDaniel's pretty much said he's going to, go after Wicker kind of the same way he did Cochran, saying they're not conservative enough. They're part of the Washington establishment, if you will. And, it's the kind of rhetoric you've heard before in various forms. But, like you said, Wicker, his campaign, his people are already talking about they're going to run a strong grassroots campaign, I think is what they called it, Bobby. So be interesting to see how that shapes up, especially if McDaniel decides to step in. I kind of wonder right now the polls and polls have kind of come under closer scrutiny since the presidential election, but they give Wicker a comfortable margin right now against McDaniel. I kind of wonder. I'm sure McDaniel is going to try to gauge things, and at some point when he comes to the point of no return on whether he's going to run, maybe consider what the polls are saying, and maybe say, okay, if I got a shot at this, I'll run. If not, I'll go for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, and a key point that I didn't get into in the story, Brad, is, let me see if I get this straight and not confuse people in doing so. Okay. If you run for a statewide office, you can take your federal campaign funds, the money you raised to run for a federal office, and convert that to the state office. But you can't take money you raised on the statewide level for a state office and convert it to a federal race. So if McDaniel is going to run, he needs to start raising money for federal on the federal level real soon to run again. I know the primary is about a year away, but still he needs to be gearing up real soon to run against a candidate like Wicker, who is, for better or worse, is part of the Washington establishment. But being part of the Washington establishment means he's going to be able to raise money. He's going to have a lot of support from a lot of powerful groups. So it'll be a tough challenge for McDaniel. He almost pulled it off in 2014. So who knows? Maybe he can do it this time.
And again, that senatorial election is in 2018. Lieutenant governor is in 2019.
That's right.
You could run for senator. If you lose, you still go for lieutenant governor the next year, certainly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about voter data and the sharing thereof. Delbert Hosemann, Secretary of State, made some headlines. I guess was it last week, Bobby, or the week before? I forget.
It was the week before when he first made the headlines. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. As far as giving out certain voter data, he told some people to go jump in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a good quote.
Which actually sounds like a nice thing to do on a day like today, Brad.
It's not the worst idea I can think of right now, Bobby. Put on the swimsuit and go jump in the Gulf. That's not terrible advice. But this is something that you're talking about sensitive data here, and now Jay Hughes from Oxford, he's a state representative. He's kind of taken Hosemann to task for this thing. He's already released some data Uh, and Bobby, so let's clarify, who has he released data to, and who is he refusing to release data to? Is it two different groups?
Well, this actually goes back to Donald Trump, but you referenced the polls a while ago, but Trump won the election, as we all know, but he lost a popular vote by about 3 million votes, and that didn't sit well with him. So he claimed that there was a lot of voter fraud, or else he would have won the popular election. And so, to try to prove his voter fraud, he has formed a commission that is co-chaired by the Kansas Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, I think is the gentleman's name. Yeah. And Mr. Secretary of State Kobach has asked the states for a lot of sensitive voter information to try to look at these charges of voter fraud, and that the information he is asking includes the last 4 digits of Social Security numbers. And of course, that's, you can do a lot with that information in itself when you come to identity theft and the internet. So Hosemann said, got a lot of national attention when he said he wasn't going to release that information, and said that essentially the President's Election Commission could go jump into the Gulf of Mexico. And since he made those comments, a lot of other states are, taking a similar stance that they weren't going to release that information. Now comes Jay Hughes, who points out that Hosemann has Mississippi participating in a voter data sharing network with other states, including Kansas, and Secretary of State Kobach. So Hughes made a point that Hosemann has already released that information to Chris Kobach through that state cooperative, and Hosemann shot back that that was totally different, that this information was protected, and it was just used to make sure that if you go back home to Missouri and register to vote there and start voting there, that you can't vote in Mississippi and Missouri at the same time, and that's what they're trying to make sure is not happening with this state cooperative. And so he said that that's different than releasing the information to the President's Commission.
Hosemann, who is a Republican, actually, when he said that, Bobby, there was some backlash, I think, against him from other Republicans, maybe, because again, this is something that Trump's people are trying to get their hands on.
Yeah, there were some, but as I said, there was some backlash. But it's been most states, whether they're headed by Republican or Democratic Secretary of States, have taken the same position as Secretary Hosemann has here in Mississippi, and that that information is not going to be released to the President's Commission. And I think, matter of fact, there might be some court action occurring on that front right now. But then Hughes, who was following this story, did some research and found out that that same information has been released by Delbert Hosemann on Mississippi voters to states, to about 20 states, or more than 20 states, I should say, as part of the state cooperative. So that's kind of that story. Now, a backstory on that, Brad, is that some people begin to think that Jay Hughes, freshman from Oxford, Democrat, might be looking to run for lieutenant governor, which everybody thinks that Delbert Hosemann is going to be running for that vacant lieutenant governor's post we were talking about a while ago when we were talking about Chris McDaniel. So, and a lot of people think Hosemann is a favorite to win that vacant seat in 2019, but some people begin to mention Jay Hughes as a possible Democratic candidate to go against Hosemann, whomever the Republican nominee is.
In his short time as a representative, Hughes has been very outspoken, and I think a lot of people know his name now, don't they?
Yeah, he's not shy.
Oh, he's certainly not. Well, that's good stuff as always, Bobby, and that's going to wrap it up here for Capitol View on this Monday. Again, if you didn't catch it all, you can watch the replay coming to you live, though, every Monday at 2 p.m. here with Bobby, our Capitol Bureau Chief. Bobby, I hope your head feels better soon. Heals up there, people.
Well, I would say that it looks worse than it feels, and it does now. But when it happened, when I hit my head, it felt as bad as it looked. I don't think I have a concussion, though, but some people say I've been walking around with a concussion my whole life, so who knows?
All right. Well, good stuff, Bobby, as always. I can follow Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Harrison9. Find his work daily in the Daily Journal and at djournal.com. That's it for Newsbreak. No, it's a different show I host. That's it for Capital View. But do look for me on Newsbreak tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at djournal.com. Might as well plug it, Bobby. And Bobby, have a good week, sir.
You too. Thanks, Brad.